And speaking of Putin and the war that he's unleashed on Europe, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has announced that more NATO members are in fact fulfilling their target of 2% GDP spending on defense. Now, speaking to the American media, Stoltenberg said that 23 of the 32 NATO members were expected to meet the group's defense spending commitments for the year.
When we made the pledge to invest 2% of GDP in defense back at the Wales summit of NATO in 2014, only 3 allies met that mark. And that was the United States, Greece, and the United Kingdom. But later today, when I see President Biden, I will announce new defense spending figures for all allies. And I can already now reveal that this year, more than 20 allies will spend at least 2% of GDP on defense. This is good for Europe and good for America, especially since much of this extra money is spent here in the United States.
Now, in a surprise compliment, Secretary Stoltenberg praised former President Donald Trump for pushing NATO allies to spend more on defense. The NATO Secretary General said, quote, "I worked with Trump over those 4 years, and the reality is that he had a very clear message on the need for European allies to spend more, and I agree with him." Now, the NATO defense investment target was agreed upon back in 2014 when member states pledged to spend 2% of their GDP on national and joint defense. However, European allies failed to reach the target, with only 10 NATO members fulfilling the criteria until just last year. Now, Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine appears to have had an effect across the alliance, as almost all nations in NATO, except Italy and Slovenia, have increased their defense spending. The increase in spending by NATO members also comes from the fear of Donald Trump being re-elected as president this November. The former president has repeatedly said that he would not protect NATO allies if they didn't meet the defense investment target. Now, if true, that would be a direct violation of NATO's Charter's collective defense in Article 5, which states that NATO allies have to treat an attack on one as an attack on all. Now, unlike the defense investment target, the NATO Charter is legally binding, and a violation by Donald Trump would have severe repercussions on ties between the U.S. and European allies. And contrary to Donald Trump, President Joe Biden has reaffirmed more American support to NATO with the ongoing war in Ukraine.
We've made NATO, under your leadership, we made it larger, stronger, and then it's more united than it's ever been. So I want to thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for incredible work you've done. Together, we're deterred further Russian aggression in Europe. And John, it's a very important announcement to make today. A record number of allies meeting the NATO commitment to at least 2% of their GDP on defense. And in fact, the number is more than double since we took office.
Now, President Biden will also lead the NATO summit, which will be held right here in Washington starting the 9th of July. As the Security Alliance marks its landmark 75th anniversary. The NATO alliance is looking stronger than ever in deterrence to Putin, who is increasingly threatening Europe and the United States with World War III. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.